Domestic Violence and Sexual Abuse, 2022. It's Brisbane, Australia, and the United States of America. Why is domestic violence and sexual abuse bent out of shape and continues to be the whopping calls for law enforcement and consequently throwing another family into chaos? Case in point, January 21st, 2022. It's Harlem, New York. Mom calls NYPD because of another domestic violence dispute, arguing with her son, which led to the unfortunate 22-year-old NYPD rookie police officer's death and his 27-year-old partner being shot in the head. Why? Just tell me why. We cannot be so fixated on being so right and winning the argument and losing our lives. In this moment, it is necessary to outmaneuver your opponent and one-up them permanently. Understand that domestic violence and sexual abuse, brutal behavior is aggressive, assaultive, belligerent, and pugnacious towards the family structure or any relationship that doesn't deserve this upending atrocity. My name is Dr. Andrea Sayers. Let's talk. Brisbane, Australia. This story is incomprehensible to say the least. This tyranny is honest to goodness. Believe it or not. Listen to this monstrosity. And this is true. Hannah Clark's spouse, Rowan Baxter, took the lives of his 3 children and wife in Camp Hill, Brisbane, Australia, by bathing his entire family in petrol in their car and burning them alive, displaying that domestic violence is not a toy to play with. This is a brutal and heartless act that tugs at your very soul and spirit. Welcome to domestic violence, folks, and this is real. I credit that this terror is worldwide, and we must be on high alert. This is really happening every single day, and we as a society must respond with the help needed immediately. We can do better than this. We need more resources to fight this beast. Help! Australia, Jackie Barker's husband, Mark Jacobs, spatters petrol on her and all over her kitchen, indicating he was going to ignite the house in a ball of flames. But what was so brave about Jackie? She managed to sucker punch him in the jaw and made a lion-hearted dash to safety. So she thought. He was on her heels and pursued her to finish the job off. Envision fuel on her face, hair and chest, along with her abuser reaching for his lighter, which was 20 centimeters from her. However, her quick-witted thinking caused her to yell at him, "Don't be an idiot!" which startled him and eventually scampered away. After years of suffering his wrath and getting nowhere with law enforcement, she took the law into her own hands and took out a private criminal prosecution in Queensland from the magistrate courts in Australia, and her abuser's feet was ultimately being held to the fire by the law. He, in the fullness of time, pleaded guilty. She won this round with a thunderous applause. Hooray! She defeated her foe. Thereupon, if you fudge the urgency of a broken relationship and carry on oblivious of the danger in the waters, the beast will strike and you will drown and go under and never to re-emerge alive again. On that account, holding the torch and stewardship yourself has got to be your intuition and is necessary in these circumstances. There is no other way around it. Just like Jackie Barker, who championed her own fate to live. You must ask yourself, is it life or death in this question? When Mayday strikes, do I continue because of shame or walk out before all is lost. Now, because of all of this agony, she's living in an unknown location in Australia and safe. Let's get relentlessly straightforward. How many more people have to die before I get your attention in the LGBTQ and heterosexual community? Another one bites the dust. Like Sidney Poitier said, be the captain of your own ship. The truth can do things lies can't do. It isn't every day we can see someone survive domestic violence and sexual abuse after years of being pummeled for the following reason. Domestic violence and sexual abuse has never been a gender-specific argument where the abuse always wins. It's been a bitter knockdown, drag-out fight for your life, regardless of gender or creed. Winner takes all. Take the power back. It belongs to you to begin with. Understand that this power is like a lady. If you have to tell people you are, you aren't, says Margaret Thatcher. Brazen-faced. What is the way onward? Can we be like strategist Tom Brady in this fight and crack the code in domestic violence and sexual abuse to win this shindig? She was declared lifeless. Young lady dies in live Facebook homicide. Here it is, a beautiful young woman who lost her life in 2021 on live stream Facebook. What a tragedy. This story ripped my heart to shreds and pieces, just like many other domestic violence and sexually abused stories. Unfortunately, the news media will cover it just like another drama. And this story, like all the other domestic violence and sexually abused stories and loss of someone's precious life, disappears into oblivion in the scrap heap of news and falls off the earth like another hairy-fairy story. This cycle must change. As domestic violence and sexually abused fighters, it is our duty to be unstoppable, to help ourselves and save others' lives. Whatever happened to my best friend? She received no mercy. Out of the storm she spoke. Did she have enough strength to hold out against the detachment of rejection? Absolutely. The Shiro wrangled with that beast and fought for the most precious thing to her, her kids. Yes, indeed. After being beaten to a pub that day, she was thrown out of the house and locks were changed. Desperate to see her 3 beautiful kids, she stood in the torrential rainstorm, drenched from head to toe, followed by buckets and buckets of endless tears, and hoping to see a glimpse of her children. She begged for mercy with those piercing eyes, but to no avail. She dug in and recommenced her daily activities, but returned catching a glimpse of her oldest son through the window being served orange juice while she stood outside of her own house helpless. Her very tender affection for her children gave her the courage to wait while hoping her abuser would flinch. She emerged as a mother in distress and remains a conqueror to this day. She was my Shiro and still is. All day, every day, a sacrificial lamb to the end and a beautiful princess. What did she do? She bided her time until he left for work. Upon entering the house, she embraced her kids and advanced towards the mirror and shattered it with her bare hands. Bleeding profusely, she wrapped her hands to stop the gushing blood and made good that day by hugging and comforting them through the confusion to the best of her ability, but refused to give up her nobility. What she did not know or perceive was that her abuser's sociopathic and psychopathic behavior is a classic sign that allows them to take advantage, fudge and vandalize the rights of others with zero remorse. She did not comprehend the absence of sympathy, penitence, contrition about her pain and suffering, and the inability to control his outright rage, because she was a loving and nurturing mother to her spouse and children. The question is, did she make it? The answer is no. Salute! She lost her life, but fought like a warrior. She was one of the most spirited human beings I knew. She risked everything to be with her kids that day, and she accomplished just that. Take into consideration, courage is most important of all to the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can practice virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage, says Maya Angelou. The beast is alive and thriving. How many more tragedies do we need? Do not your life belongs to you? Pathologizing this disease gives these trolls carte blanche to thrive and maintain their power of plenty. However, can we apply strategies from the best of the best strategists to make it to another side alive? Can we imitate strategies from the best to win this generational skirmish? Chances are this brawl can be defeated once and for all if we decide to learn and apply these strategies to hang one's hat to make it through this confrontation. Take on board, we'll come to blows at times before we climb this mountain and make it to the other side. You're here to acquire your conquest, and who can be better to learn from no other than Tom Brady, the architect himself in this fight, to save your life and crack this code perpetually. I absolutely believe this is possible, and here's why. What is your expectation? Is it to live, or is it to die prematurely because of an emotional attachment which will cause you to go down in ruin like the Titanic? Recognize this is your call, and this fight must mean everything to you. This fight must be personal until you see the light of day and your chains are off permanently. You can ask a domestic violence and sexually abused independent that was confined and now unchained how liberty feels, and you'll be hungry to be unbound. The truth is, you're prostrate and you should drag the roll over and quit. Domestic violence is no respecter of persons. Who do you think you are? Who gives you the right to take someone's life? Who? January 17th, 2022, Capital One parking lot, Montgomery County. A couple failed to reach an understanding about money in reference to their business. So he decides to play God by mauling his wife, Alka Himanachu Tana, with his SUV outside the bank and taking her life instantly. She did not survive. Another incident, Monday, October 2019. Young girl Alexis Taylor witnesses her brother and mom viciously executed by mom's ex-lover at a Sonoma Trace in Antioch home, along with her being viciously injured and hospitalized. Fortunately, Alexis Taylor survived, but her mom and brother, who were stabbed to death, did not. Can another abuser be defeated once and for all? The answer is yes. What does that mean? You misinterpret your abuser's pattern and fracture their design by splintering their plan and sweeping their spoilage into smithereens. It is expediently saying you must fight to prevail regardless of if you are a Tom Brady fan or not, by reconstructing your thinking in this crisis, which is necessary to be indispensable. Otherwise you will perish just like the others who blinked in this crisis. How could this vicious act be committed on live Facebook? Here's the thing. Can we bring that beautiful woman who lost her life on Facebook live stream back? No, we can't. But what we can do in this moment is recognize why these talks are necessary and how they provide life-saving skills to survive this brute called Domestic Violence and Sexual Abuse. The strategy king, the man himself, Tom Brady. Let's talk the game plan. Who is Tom Brady? And how does his story tie in with coping with domestic violence and sexual abuse and their strategy? It's called learning from the best. The strategic genius we can all glean from. Go out from your conventional thinking and imagine what it is to think like a strategist. Tom Brady is an American football quarterback from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the NFL heavyweight, who's been also known as the GOAT. That means the greatest of all time. And here is why. He's assiduous about stalking his vision of whatever is his holy grail. He is purposeful about his willpower and calculating in defeating any target. He is thus far relentless. What do you make of that? That stands in stark contrast with the defeated in the battle of domestic violence and sexual abuse. The question is, do you have the ability to become a strategic pedigree of him to win this fight? Yes! 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 And yes again. Serving up the tea. Although perplexed, knowing the answer to this fundamental question is not complicated. But there are rules in this fight, and they're not incomprehensible. If they are commensurably and objectively applied, we can defeat this beast called domestic violence and sexual abuse. Therefore, every survivor must practice how to possess the inescapable caliber and mirror from one of the best strategists to date. And his name is Tom Brady. A vital way to start thinking. Know what works for you and use it full throttle up. Here is where his story is necessary to be duplicated. He's a winner at everything he touches. And when he decides to win whatever battle he's challenged, he upsets the apple cart and wins. Hence, your sine qua non is to acquire the photocopy of his frame of mind to attain the impossible in this scrimmage. His course of action is essential for the abused, and this maneuver is desperately needed and is important. And here's why, family. The world of domestic violence and sexual abuse can be asphyxiating and dangerous. She was slain. Another woman loses her life in domestic violence at her own wedding. Is that to be taken lightly? Absolutely not. Ex-lover refuses to quit, shows up on her wedding day and takes her life away in a hail of bullets. For the record, how do you explain that? There's no explanation in the world. But that grateful, magnificent life is no longer here. For that reason, domestic violence and sexual abuse should be taken acutely, family and friends. As you know, domestic violence and sexual abuse has become an existential threat towards the institution of family. On that account, you probably know about someone who's being abused right now and fears leaving that relationship. The question is, could that happen to you? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. This is not hyperbole. Crossing over from bondage to freedom. You may be in an abusive relationship, wondering, how do I leave? Go out on that limb. Your life depends on it. Do you choose to live or be at the mercy of your abuser? In the event you decide to choose life, be determined to live life on your own terms, as per the mastermind. Grab that tenacity, endurance, stick-to-itiveness, staying power, perseverance, and application. And understand you could be next. It's time to take the lead and rely on being informative, strategic, and exercising your willpower as needed. If you must choose between sparing your life or making a compromise with the enemy, your options should be to safeguard your life first. You cannot possibly script where your life is heading, but you can recuse yourself from stumbling further. Remember, strategy is robustness. Use every tool you have at your disposal. Instead of allowing yourself to sink back, continue to underscore that the impossible can be possible with courage of that little voice at the end of the battle. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. We learned about another domestic violence story in the news. Miss G's domestic violence started out with verbal abuse, then physical abuse, then being shot in the back, which led to her being paralyzed forever. We can go on and on and on, but instead I choose to uplift you and encourage you to what is possible in this life. It is called hope. The extraordinary cataclysm in the human being is an individual lacking usefulness. That being the case, discontinue taking part in being a chump to thankless individuals and circumvent this outrageous, detestable behavior by seeking out the best way possible. Fanning the flames in your house will cost you your life. Understand, there's a comprehensive buttonhole noteworthy to a lane to conjure up your withdrawal safely, and it's called strategy and careful planning. The abuser is partial and wants to maintain control. They promise nothing but torture, and if unchecked, there is continued repulsive behavior from your culprit, which will be sustained with more threats. Consequently, the power in you must be very strategic to make subtle changes to concede a winning outcome. Notwithstanding the gravity of your dilemma, and being tone deaf is not an option you can afford. You must think on your feet, and here's why. That is a huge difference between a mistake and you are making a leeway of miscalculation. Keep score on the matters in question. It might save your life. Your chance to display character and represent the equitable by pushing back to leave is now. Challenge your question of doubt. Challenge your formulation of circumstances. Reset your position because your existence depends on it. Doing so is urgent and you must respond immediately. What you can do and how. Milk this moment for what it is. Recognize that malingering and lazy is not an option. You can afford, my dearest. By that same token, be careful not to overplay your hand, but be proactive, because this is predicated on the fact that the beast is alive and well, and flip-flopping cannot be in your vocabulary. This is go time. All hands on deck. It's your life. Misconceptions about the honeymoon phase. What do you do if you're not sure about the outcome? You become informed as much as possible, because this public health crisis isn't getting any better, aside from becoming more covert and deceptive. Understandably so, intimate partner violence, called IPV, has been around for generations. And here is how it is set in motion. 1, the beginning of verbal and sexual abuse. 2, the unexpected events. 3, the kiss and makeup episode and sweeping these behaviors under the rug. Don't be bamboozled. Domestic violence and sexual abuse is alive and well. It is all our responsibilities to assist our loved ones to free themselves and an opportunity to live a wholesome life, just like you, because it never gets better with time. What ingredient about domestic violence and sexual abuse is indecipherable? Never become arrogant. Never become bumptious. Never become too big for your boots. It can cost you your life that day. There's nothing wrong with humility. And honey, you can catch more flies on your way out the door. What you can know. The more I think of my life, I'm reminded of how fortunate I am to be alive in this moment. Just like the superstar Halle Berry, the years of abuse took its toll on her. And after being punched in the head so many times, she did lose her hearing. And myself, I did lose my hearing. However, one day a thought came to my head. It was time to get my son to safety, to be able to free myself once and for all. So I managed to negotiate with my abuser that I needed a vacation, and flying to London, England with my son to be with my parents and siblings was what I desired. Following many conversations, he agreed, and I flew with my son but did not return with him because I felt he was safer there for the moment. Unfortunately, upon returning home unexpectedly, my antiquated older best friend took up temporary residence with my ex-spouse. Subsequently, trying the keys to the house, the locks were changed to my surprise. Frantic and confused after being unable to enter my home after a long trip, I helped myself to the hinges on the door, which came off with a thunder. Was that the correct thing to do? I would say no in hindsight. My vintage best friend was claiming ownership to my now ex-spouse in her almost nude apparel. Furthermore, she did not hesitate to call the police, who misconstrued me for an intruder. Fortunately, this episode had a great ending. I was unhurt, but my so-called best friend was removed from my then residence as per my ex-spouse orders. She became disposable material, and her thirst for what was not hers did not reap her any benefits in the end. Without hesitation, I informed her spouse. To his surprise, he gasped with astonishment and proceeded to look for his wife that evening, who he eventually found. Regrettably, he thereafter ended up in the psych unit. No love lost from her. She moved on to her next conquest. Can you see the future? The answer is no. Nevertheless, my life is now far removed from that nightmare. Appreciate the greatest story of all. Time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude, says Oprah Winfrey. But what did I learn from that experience? Everyone close to you, regardless of their association to you, is not your friend. Although I thought she was my best friend, she was a traitor. My ex-spouse never married her because she became a woman scorned. Domestic violence and sexual abuse relationships can take many turns in the road. It does not discriminate, regardless of who you are. Keep your utmost intimate family, like your parents and siblings, close if they are worthy. Best friends can sometimes turn out to be your worst nightmare when you make them your bosom buddies. Play your cards close to your chest, family. A human being who contemplated their life. This is my story, and I hope this experience becomes an eye-opener for you on this journey. Getting angry is not helpful in this situation. Getting out to save your life, that's not an option, that's a fact. Oprah Winfrey said defiantly, doing the best of this moment puts you in the best place for the next moment. Connecting the dots. This fight continues. This was an expensive lesson, but I learned many tough lessons, so you can too. Incredibly, you need to stand vice-like in your conclusion against the tactics of your wrongdoer. You're still existing, and you succeeded another day until your abuser is unfastened. You must perch anchored so that their blitz does not submerge you. You need grit. Outlast this. Don't be spooked at no time and give oneself up. As a survivor, there is the need to hold on to any port and keep your sharpness. Get organized. This encouragement will strengthen you. What did Kim Kardashian skillfully say? At the end of the day, life is about being happy and being who you are. So, is your life worth fighting for? Yes! 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 You need to think about the pros and cons to be a survivor. Try to live one day at a time. Still and all, you must be a ravenous survivor, fighting for what you deserve. You must accomplish inconceivable at each and every juncture in your life. Until we meet again, family and friends, I'm no longer ashamed of my past. That's why it's called my past. My name is Dr. Andrea Sears. Life is what you do during the storm. Fight your best fight to save your life. To really make a touchdown in this life, you must sometimes be opinionated at times and disagree with the status quo. That's the fact. Like it or leave it. What you do today is what counts, so it won't encompass empty. Therefore, keep in mind, some conclusions surpass your reasoning. So rather than rouse up and loathe the things you're experiencing, recognize that even if it's just in your intelligence, concede your stratagem and resume to be humble but purposeful in your actions. Own up to your gaffe and try hard not to replicate that behavior. Look ahead. The grounds are shifting. Great things are achievable, my friend and family. It's within your reach. Fight! Fight! Fight for your life. Things are going to improve. It isn't beyond you.